that the connection sometimes stops for a few seconds. So if that happens and you can't understand me, please stop me. Okay, I already introduced myself. I'm going to talk about the VUB allocation model today. Okay, so the universities rely heavily on funding by the government, and this funding is distributed by allocation models. So actually, there are two models to speak of. First off, we have the Flemish allocation model, AVOX, which is used to distribute the funding over the universities. And then we have the VUB allocation model that distributes the received operating grant across the faculties. So AVOX is just the Flemish name of the Flemish Department of Higher Education, which is responsible for the funding of universities, but also other higher education institutions of the Flemish community. So today I'm going to speak about what are the structure of the models and what are the parameters and indicators that define the funding. So the VUB relies on many funding streams to support its working. Funding stream 1 is the one we will talk about today. This provides the core budget for personnel and institutional operations, and is thus provided by the Flemish government. And the main component of funding stream 1 is the operating grants or werkingsuitkering, which is distributed by the allocation models. So how does the allocation model work? So universities are scored on different education and research parameters, which will determine the performance of the university.
Can
and
you
for
wait
this,
1 second, Arno?
Yeah, sure.
It's perfectly clear, but yeah, voila. Okay, we're now there, right?
Full time.
We should have put projector.
Yeah. Yeah, because it uses small numbers. It's more.
Yeah, no, it's not
And
perfect.
this, we are fixing the
screen.
Click on afficher here on the right, upper right, and then you click like a cube.
Immersive.
Immersive, maybe. Oh no, that's not. Back.
Universities are scored with education and research parameters to determine the university performance. And these parameters are evaluated in a 5-year evaluation window in the past, which is mainly around 7 to 2 years ago is the 5-year window. So that means that there is a temporal disconnect between university performance and cost. So that would mean that, for example, if next year the amount of students at the VUB would double, then we need more staff to teach those students. But the funding for those students will only appear or start to appear after 2 years and then spread over 5 years. So the principle is that the share in the allocation model determines the share of the operating grant that the university receives. This means that there is a closed envelope system. So the performance of other universities directly affects the VUB share. So that means that if other universities are growing very fast, then the share of the VUB will actually go down, and thus the funding, even if the VUB on its own grows.
That's a zero-sum game.
Yes, exactly. So the universities are in direct competition for this funding. So this graph shows the evolution of the shares in this allocation model of the last 10 years. So the VUB is the dark blue line. And we see that these shares are relatively stable, but the share of the VUB is actually in a slight positive trend from 15 to 24. Now I'm going to go over the different parameters that are in the AVOX allocation model. So this model is very complex, there are a lot of nuances. So a lot of times I'm going to oversimplify or leave out some details for the sake of the presentation. So first off, we have number A, the SOW, which is just a 5-year average of enrolled credits in bachelor's and master programs. The weight in orange that I added is the approximate weight of this parameter in the latest version of the model. So this can be read as that 6% of the funding can be attributed to this enrolled credits of this parameter.
6% of the funding of all universities or 6% of the funding of the VUB?
Of all the universities. So 6% of the model is this parameter.
That's very little, no? 6%.
Yes, but enrolled credits are also a small fraction of the next parameter. VOW, which is a pretty complex one. The main component of this is VOW algemeen or general, which has 43% of the weight. And it is a combination of 5-year averages of input, output, and diplomas. Input is our enrolled credits of new bachelor students. So when a student first goes to any higher education institution. So if a student has been enrolled for a few years at another university and starts anew at the VUB in a completely different program, this funding is not given twice. So it's only given for the first time a specific student is enrolled. Next, we have earned credits in bachelor's, master's, bridging, and preparatory programs. And then we have master program graduations. So these one measure study performance mainly.
So I can ask a question?
Sure.
A student who starts in Antwerp a degree in biology, but then switches to mathematics and comes to the VUB, he starts in the, or she starts in the first year, but the VUB does not receive earned ECTS funding for that student.
Only for the 6%, I guess.
For this input part.
Yeah,
that is it is still oversimplified, but it has the general idea of what this does. It is pretty complex.
Okay, thank you very much.
So other components in this VOW category are OM, which is for research masters. It has a very small weight, but our faculty actually is one of the only two at the VUB which has a small share in this parameter because of the research master in philosophy. And then also this VOW GK is exclusive to the Faculty of Health and Medicine. So 5% of the funding is purely attributed to them. So then we have the research parameters. We have the SOZ is comprised of unweighted PhDs and publications. Publications are actually based on a 3-year window instead of 5. I'm going to explain this more in detail later on when I talk about the BOS financing. And then the VOZ is comprised of 5 parts, weighted bachelor and master diplomas. It is a little weird that the government categorizes this as a research parameter. Internally, we see this as an education parameter because it's about degrees, of course. And we also have, again, PhDs, this time weighted, and publications and citations. And these are actually identical to the publications parameter of SOZ. So it's actually counted identically 3 times. And then also a small part, diversity and mobility of SAP. So this is to reward appointments of ZAP, so professors, in the framework of diversity and mobility. And for example, this can be appointments of female ZAP or appointments of SAP that have acquired their PhD at another university than the VUB, but are then appointed by the VUB. So as I briefly mentioned before, for some parameters, the points are weighted by discipline. So for example, credits of an engineering student is worth 3 times as much as the credit of a humanities student. And the rationale behind this is that it is more expensive to train an engineering student because you need more expensive equipment, for example, or a health student needs laboratories and so on. But so the humanity, excuse me?
Yeah, 3 times seems a lot more expensive.
Yes, it's that's how the government sees it exactly. And so yeah, the humanities faculties always have the lowest weight of 1 across all parameters. Okay, to simplify it a little bit, we can group the parameters by the indicators that they measure. So then we can actually have 5 groups: enrolled credits, study performance with a small part, enrolled credits, publications, PhDs, and diversity and mobility. So you can see that, for example, more than half of the funding is determined by study performance, mainly. And the division is about 60% education, 40% research in this AVOX model. Okay, so that is the first part, I think. Yes. So then we have the VUB allocation model. So from the previous model, the VUB receives its grant, and then it needs to distribute it internally across the faculties and other departments. So first, 30% overhead is taken from the budget.
38%, almost 40%.
Yes, exactly.
Wait, Arne, is this new or this has been always like this?
I think this is recent.
The 38% overhead, it is a fixed percentage, so it's the same every year, and it is the same. It has been like this for at least since 2022. So for
I think it makes sense because it's to make the whole university function. It's not to pay people, so you need this big overhead to make the whole work.
But you need to pay people as well. But it indicates in a direction of strong bureaucratization of the institution.
yes,
Yeah, but we have had grants with less than that. So
yeah, but that doesn't mean
this one is what from the AVOX funding is used internal is like used
that's what from the Flemish
from the total credit that the VUB gets 38% is used for.
Okay. When it say grant, I immediately want to think.
No, it's not a research.
No, grant is not the correct word.
Allocated money. Yeah, whatever.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. Continue. That was my bad.
Yeah. So I can say 38% is a rather large overhead. I don't know exactly what it is at other universities, but I think the VUB has the largest amount of this.
What is EDUMA?
Educative masters. So yes, it's mainly used for funding of central departments such as R&D, Marcom, which is marketing and communication, but it also funds study programs that fall out of the scope of the standard allocation model, such as these educative masters and integrating programs such as applied linguistics that you have at our faculty. They are funded by a different system.
One question. Do you know the House of Sustainable Transitions? Host? No? Because, and what about these centers like Vrije's and these things that don't belong to any faculty? They get money from that overhead too?
I am not sure about that.
Yeah, that's a good, just note this question because it's good to know like how these other, supra or parallel to faculty entities are funded, because these seem to be initiatives or departments, what you show, R&D, Marcom, and so on, But there are also like centers,
But
like inter-university centers.
CLEA for a long time was like
We were in the
that,
rectorate,
and
but
we were in the rectorate.
were
and
we getting money
we
from
were
there?
Can I make myself? We were funded
Sorry,
from the. It's no problem. From the central, what we now would call overhead budget. We were financed back because it was money from the rectorate. But I have no idea whether it was back then already 38%. I'm quite surprised by this amount. That's the only thing.
Yeah. Okay, Arne. Arne is gone. Arne?
I'm here, yes.
Okay, okay. Yeah. So the remaining is distributed over the faculties. Yes.
Yeah.
Edima is the teacher's education. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
You know, for graduates, is there sometimes
sorry, can you repeat that?
for postgraduates, or is there sometimes course that
Postgraduates are out of the scope of this allocation model. I'm not exactly sure how that funding works. But as I have shown in the start of the presentation, there are a lot of funding streams present. So my expertise is mainly funding stream 1, but I am not aware of all different monetary streams at the VUB.
No, but I think that the question, that's a valid question, but since I think already the decree comes, postgraduates are not funded in principle anymore.
What I understood, these integrating programs are sometimes things that are not funded directly, but then they take an amount to fund these things.
The VUB could take a part of an allocation model to fund them, but
like this applied scientifics or this educational masters, I guess these are things which are, or that's how I understood that they are not funded directly.
Yeah, but educational master is something else because it's a program that is nevertheless legally required to be able to be a teacher. I mean, it's a complicated question, but it will not be easy to get money from this model for host or for the School of Thinking. I don't say impossible, but not easy.
Yeah, we're learning.
Okay. Thank you. Continue, please.
Thank you, Arne.
Okay, no problem. So, as I said, the remaining funds after the 30% overhead need to be distributed over the faculties. And for this, the internal VUB allocation model is used. It uses the same basis and logic as the AVOX allocation model, but it is modified and expanded. So this implies that there is also a closed envelope system. So the performance of other faculties directly affects the share of and the funding of our faculty. This graph shows the shares of the different faculties of the last 7 years. So the share of our faculty is in yellow. And you can see it is the lowest of the traditional 8 faculties. And it has
brown
GF.
This
brown.
The right one, the upper one is health.
No, the lower one.
Go at the bottom, the brown thing that starts in the middle.
Was?
Yeah, these I forgot what they are. I think it's these are very small departments. They are not traditional faculties, but they are also counted in the standard allocation model. I am not exactly sure what programs these are, sorry.
Okay, no problem. But we are the yellow. We are next.
Yes.
Let's say.
Yes.
And
who is the big one on top? The orange red one?
That is medicine and health.
You see, so
where is engineering?
Up is us.
Engineering is gray.
The third one.
Yes, the fourth one.
Counting from
third,
the top. Yeah, the third one counting from the fourth one, pardon. The fourth one counting.
The one going down?
Yeah, I guess so. They are going down, right?
The green and
which one is philosophy?
The green one is a side one.
Philosophy is included in the yellow one. Languages and humanities.
So this is philosophy. This is engineering.
Let me show you let me do it with the Arne all together.
Okay, yeah.
So here is my mouse. Arne, do you see it?
No.
No, you have a mouse. You can show you with your mouse then.
You see it?
Okay. Yes, now we see it. So the top one is
health.
Medicine and health.
The next one is science. No?
Green is
green
sciences.
And that's going down.
Wait. The green one is the
The
science.
green one, yeah.
Yeah, exact sciences, yes.
And then the orange one that goes up.
Orange is economics and
science.
social sciences.
Economics.
Yeah. And then the gray one.
Engineering.
Engineering. And then the red.
The dark red one is rechten. That's how do you say it?
Right. Yeah.
Law.
Right. Law and
blue,
rights. Yes.
And the blue one.
Political.
Psychology is the light blue.
Psychology and education.
Yeah.
And then the blue one, the dark blue one.
How do you say it? Sport sciences.
Yeah. And then the yellow one is us.
Bewegingswetenschappen.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
yellow is philosophy, history, and linguistics. That is us. Yes.
Okay,
The last one.
interesting.
And we seem to be the move up in this plot because we just established in 2023 and joined the yellow faculty in 2023. So this might be our increase. We coming, maybe.
Yes, but because there are windows in the past, it is with a delay. So if you would have joined in 2023, you would first see the effect in 2025, and there
That's
is.
what I'm saying.
Yes. Okay. Sorry. Yeah.
Yes.
So there is an increase.
So we
Yes.
have still to wait to know what our weight exactly is, but it should be positive, right?
Oh,
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. But so yeah, as I was.
so far it's imaginary. Okay, continue, Arne. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So as I said, there is the closed envelope system. And as you can see in the orange line, the economics and social sciences faculty has been growing very, very fast. So that growth is actually detrimental to the shares of the other faculties at the VUB.
Yes, may I make a remark on that? One of the reasons is that the Faculty of Economics and Social Sciences stole the Department of Communication from the letters and philosophy. So they took and they promised them more support and blah, blah, blah. But this was the biggest part of the lettering and humanities faculty, and it went in one go to another faculty. So that's really bad for us.
Yeah, but good for them.
Yeah,
because
that definitely explains a part of
it's a zero-sum game too, right?
Yes.
So the economics went into the orange one and left the gray one then?
No, not the economics, the communication.
The communication. It left the gray one. Engineering.
Left the yellow one and went to the orange one that is going up so strongly.
That's correct.
Okay, but the yellow one is not going down. So
it was going down then. Now it went up because of the merge with CLEA.
I think the sharp moving up is not just because it's way too sharp moving up, that it can be just because of the communication.
Yeah, but yeah.
I know it's the communication and the strategy they implemented, obviously. Yeah. They deliver.
This has a whole kind of ripple off effect.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, this is very interesting. Thank you.
Okay, I shall continue.
Yes.
So the VUB allocation model, it's comprised of mainly a modified version of the AVOX allocation model. So the original parameters are reduced to 70% of their original weight. And also internal datasets are used for PhDs and publications, which is the BAS funding model A. Publications are actually not impacted by this change. PhDs are, so I am not exactly sure what's the government measures because I only work with the VUB allocation model.
Yeah.
Um,
And then also, yes?
Sorry, I need to ask a question because I'm not completely at the current on this. 70%, if the government gives you one credit parameter, the VUB uses only 70% to distribute.
No, it distributes all the money, but it shifts the weights around. So it adds new parameters, and the old parameters are reduced in weight. So they are less important.
So there is 30% new stuff, if you want.
Yes.
To
distribute.
And the part of that is these internal data sets for PhDs and publications, which you're going to explain, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so I need to provide some context. So, what the BOS funding is. So, as Thomas mentioned, R&D uses its own funding model to distribute funds related to funding stream 2, called the BOS financing, which is based on PhDs and publications. So they use two models for this, Model A and Model B. Model A is based on account of output of departments, such as HARP, which philosophy belongs to, and Model B counts output of large research groups, such as CLEA. And so this BOS financing uses its own logic and parameters and calculations. The allocation model does not follow those logic, but it does use the base count of Model A as how do you say it, to replace the parameters of AVOX with. So a little more about publications. So for the humanities, which ones are taken up in this count? So for humanities, all publications in the, I don't know how to pronounce it, VABB, SAW, in so the 3-year window, 2020 to 2022 was the latest. And publications are weighted by their type. So an article in a journal or a book as an author is worth 10 times as much as a proceeding, for example.
That's a little bit over the top.
Yes, also I can imagine making a book is a lot costs a lot more effort than writing an article, but it has the same funding.
Yes, that's not a very good kind of distribution indeed.
PhDs, a little more simple. So PhDs achieved in a 5-year window, and so we have both unweighted and a weighted parameter. And so the weighing is just a weighing 1 for humanities and weighing 2 for the sciences.
So a PhD in the sciences is automatically 2 times more worth than one in the...
Yeah.
That's really ridiculous.
Okay,
a question. Sorry?
PhDs. No, sorry, I'm asking the PhD student here. You are inscribed in the which faculty? Philosophy, like literature. Okay.
I wonder with
the
interdisciplinary PhD.
No, because when you submit the PhD, interdisciplinary PhD, you have to choose which faculty are you hosted by.
I had to just choose 2 disciplines. I have to choose.
No, now with the form is different.
No, but you are a student of mathematics. For you, it would not be a problem.
No, it depends on your PhD. Depends on your master.
So, yeah, I think Fabricio inscribed himself in the engineering when he filled the form, so probably he's worth 2 points. I don't know. Yeah, anyways, continue.
I think I'm going to, your question will be answered with this slide. So it is a question that I'm often asked is, how is funding divided if there are multiple authors or promoters?
Yeah.
And so how the count works is, I'm going to take publications for an example. So it is counted 1 time for each department with a contributing author. So that means that if a publication has 5 authors from HARP, it is only counted 1 time. But if there is just 1 more author from another department, it is also counted fully for that department. So that works within and across faculties. So a publication can be can provide funding for the full amount to multiple faculties, or even multiple times within the same faculty. So, for example, if a publication has a HARP and a list author, it will be counted 2 times for our faculty. And so this measure...
our faculty.
Because,
so the 2 faculties receive 2 times the credit.
No, these are 2 departments of the same faculty.
Yeah, of course,
yes.
Yeah, okay.
So they foster interdepartmental collaboration.
Yes, exactly.
Implicitly.
Yeah.
I think they mainly do it to prevent if funding would be equally divided among the departments, that would probably prevent interdisciplinarity from existing, because it would be detrimental to the funding. But this way, it actually is rewarded.
Yeah, but this gets a lot of counterproductive effects as well. Cooperation between people from one department is real and often happens much more often than cooperation between people from other departments or places. That's a reality, even if there is interdisciplinarity. So it's also a way of saving money, right? It's not really
a proposal to try colluding with colleagues from other, finding higher structures of collusion.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm very sorry.
So,
that's not
all these things can happen. Yes.
Yeah, but it's just a way of saving money. That's all.
I'm not sure about that, but it's possible.
Yeah, I think it creates lots of possibles, but then how they become actual, it depends on the scholar, on the professor's behavior, from the researcher's behavior.
That is not, it depends on the culture within faculties and departments. Yeah, but culture internal cooperation can be very logical and very good. I was a student in the classical department in the time that it still exists at the VUB, simply because the others are capable of reading Greek or Latin. You cooperate a lot with your colleagues inside, and then you would be punished. While the work of the research was top level internationally, so there is no rationale behind that.
No. But for any policy, I think you will find a scenario for which it doesn't work. And so that's what I'm saying. Like there is no, I'm not sure, but I don't think there is perfect policy.
No, I agree with that. But the point, if you look at the history, you see that there are certain large standards.
We want to see that.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. So, lastly, I'm going to explain the parameters the VUB adds to the model. So the ones on this slide are related to education. First off, we have verwevenheid or interconnection, which is calculated as the 5-year sum of credits taught to students from other faculties. And philosophy is actually very strong in this. I think maybe it is a program at the VUB with the most interconnection out of all of them. I'm not 100% sure about that, but it's definitely one of the most strongest in this regard.
That's probably because of the many choice subjects that you can have from different faculties.
Next up, we have internationalization, which is calculated by amount of outgoing students on exchange programs, credits achieved by international students at the VUB, and the amount of LIR UOS grants. This parameter is under heavy discussion for a few years, and the window is actually frozen for a pretty long time already, for 15-16 through 18-18. So all new efforts that are made.
15-16 means year 2015 to year 2016. It's not like medieval times.
I was wondering.
I'm sorry, it's academic years. So academic year 15-16.
Yeah. I was wondering for a moment. What is UOS grant? UOS?
It's the Flemish International Cooperation Agency.
Yes, thank you.
Is this
is to do grants with the Africa?
Cuba, ontwikkelingssamenwerking. Okay, yes, okay.
Yes, so it is a bit weird. This internationalization parameter has a 5% weight in the finance model, which is pretty large, but it is not based on recent efforts. It is still based on...
Let me make a little pause here, Arne, because this is the question I told you before. I was coming to these guys to find out how much value my internationalization work has. And then I was trying to find the case,
zero,
which is this. And then they told me, but the window is frozen since you came here. So all what you have done all these years is worth nothing because they have frozen the window.
What does this mean, the window? There is no money that is...
No. They have the values between 16 and 19 are repeated every year. So if you do new things, they don't count because they still use the values of ongoing students, ACTS, Bureau's grants in that window time.
But there is some money they could give you. Something.
And they keep giving the same amount. It's just a fixed amount because they don't update the data.
They want to get rid of this.
They are not updating the data because they are discussing the concept
I think
Yeah.
he is right.
Yeah, that's what he said.
Maybe it's even not so bad that it's frozen, because I'm quite sure at the moment, with present politics in power in Flanders, if you get this back on track, they will abolish it completely. That's what I suspect.
Well,
almost.
but then they will have to change the whole policy of the VUB, because they say we are an internationally engaged university and blah blah blah, and they don't even have
Okay,
KPI
on
for it.
VUB level, no, I
This is
agree.
VUB level.
But
Yeah.
is it also, sorry, good question. Is it also frozen on the
No,
Flemish level?
This one is VB.
Yes,
so
it's VUB only.
Only,
So
okay,
it's a
no.
problem of the VUB.
Sorry. Okay.
Caroline Powell said, okay, we're gonna do internationalization.
Yes.
So we have to modify this KPI and have an updated thing. They made a committee, and the guys were useless to come up with something useful.
Okay.
So this has been ongoing, basically, and they keep using the same data from before, which means that everything you do now for
I
it,
see.
value zero.
No,
has zero
okay.
value.
And there
Yeah.
you are right, and that's indeed an internal problem.
Yeah.
But it nevertheless is the case that all the money for this kind of developmental cooperation or whatever on the Flemish side has decreased
Probably,
with 70%.
Yes.
Yeah. That might also be one of the reasons that they got stuck.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but okay. No, interesting. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, every year they discuss that parameter, and every year it stays unchanged. But I have heard that they're currently working on a new version of the VUB allocation model.
Yeah.
But I do not have a lot of details about that. I am not part of the working group, and I receive very little news about this.
And I think we will be shocked if it comes out.
Do you know who we can contact?
The dean, probably. So Alex. I think he is part of the discussion group. Outside of him, I'm not sure.
Yeah, we can find out. Yeah.
Okay, so other parameters that are added.
Sorry to interrupt once more. Excuse me, please.
It's a 20-minute talk, by the way.
Yeah, but okay, but we're not many, and it makes sense to discuss.
We're doing no KPI academic.
Voilà.
Yeah.
It's very interesting, by the way.
Yes.
But the fact that there was a plan to change the organic statute, the basic law of the university, this summer, to reduce the number of faculties from 8 to 3, which was luckily enough abolished, because they did not succeed even through all the pressure to get a majority of the votes in the Universiteitsraad. But I think that idea is linked to the way they are preparing the allocation model. Nevertheless, so don't expect anything good from the new allocation model for our faculty. That's my prediction. And I hope I'm wrong. I like to be wrong.
Okay, continue, please, Arne.
Okay, so the next policy parameter is working students. It is identical to the VOW general parameter of the AVOX allocation model, but it only takes students with a working student statute. And then we have the 10% correction factor. It's not exactly a policy parameter, but I still added it here because it is related to education. And it is just a 5-year sum of unweighted enrolled credits of all bachelor's, master's, bridging, and preparatory programs.
Yeah. Which makes sense.
Okay, next we have some extra research parameters. First one, external research funding 4.2 is the 5-year sum of all external research funding that is related to monetary flow for. So this includes FPO, federal government funding, European Union funding, and so on.
What was in the red circle? The red, I can't read it, it's too small.
Geldstroom 4, contactonderzoek met privé met overheidssteun.
Okay, thank you very much.
So then the last two, we have appointments on external research funding. So if a person has a project and needs extra staff for the project, how do you say it? A compensation for that personnel cost is made here, and then we also have a 5-year sum of the FAO appointments in FTE. So then I make a comparison side by side of, as I did before, how the weights of the different indicators or things that are measured. And we can see that the weights of the different constituents of the model are shifted. A lot of things are added. So the VUB allocation model actually places a lot more emphasis on enrolled credits, less emphasis on study performance, and it adds a completely new category of this external research. But it's still about 60-40, the balance is about the same, a little more into research.
It's a bit more nuanced, if you want to say it like that.
Yes. Okay, I think that's it. I didn't have time to add a conclusion, so
it's okay.
So any questions?
It was super clear and super interesting. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I have one question just to start a little discussion, but we have to have your talk. But just as a little discussion, have you been contacted by other faculties, by other or you work for our faculty only, or how is this data science people working on this? Are they connected? What's that underground culture?
So working on this mainly is the department STBE. This is Department of Policy and Strategy. They also employ data analysts like me, and they are the main people working on this. But outside of that, I am one of the only ones that has any insight expertise in this outside of high-level managers and director and so on.
So actually, yeah, continue, please.
So yeah, we are the only faculty that is actively engaged with this matter, and no other faculties have not contacted me about this, but they would rather contact the Department of Policy and Strategy with those matters.
And are you in contact with the data analysts of this Department of Strategy?
Yes, a lot.
So that's your information is up to date, and they give it to you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they are very helpful, and they share it. Yeah.
That's very good. I think that one of the reasons, correct me if I'm wrong, that our faculty is doing so much effort with it that they even have a specialist for it, which is really good, is because our survival depends so much on it, right?
Yes. Yes, that's correct.
And since you sorry, go ahead.
Just wanted to say I do not want to talk about too much of the finances of the faculty. I just want to speak a lot more about the allocation model and the structure. But yes, there is a very large deficit at the faculty, and that is one of the main reasons they employed me. That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, and since you see the trends and all this, the structure and the trends and so on, do you think there are some opportunities for the faculty? Not thinking on money, but just on numbers. Shall we invest more in education? Shall we invest more in research? What would be according to what you see from the data, what can go, you don't know any potentialities, but from the concretes?
It's very hard to answer. I think effort in education is always very hard to to receive output from, because the last years the faculty has made a lot of effort to get more students, have the students perform better. But we see the last 2 years the amount of students at the faculty is actually going down. So
the problem is, excuse me to interrupt. The problem is already at least 15 to 20 years, there is actually an underinvestment, if you look at it objectively, in this faculty to keep up sufficient high-level personnel, academic and even administrative personnel, to keep that faculty rolling. Now, all these people that are retiring in philosophy, almost nobody will really be replaced by somebody new. They abolish a few of the things and they give a little bit of mandates to people that are already there. So that's not something that creates an attractive renewal. When I studied philosophy here, you had really names in the philosophy. Now I'm very sorry, but there is nobody. I don't say that these people have no value, but there is nobody who is really like attractive, like, wow, I want to see or hear this person. And there is no real, how would I say, perspective at the moment. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see it, where at least some of the money that is there will be invested in making the staff, the collection of staff, more attractive again. So it's a feedback loop. And of course, because the university doesn't want to really invest in this, which is completely stupid, but I mean, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It started with the abolishment of the classics department. Now 15 to 20 years ago. We had a fantastic classics department and they abolished it. They were pressured from the outside, but okay. It would be like suppressing the Department of Mathematics in exact science. You cannot be serious anymore as the university if you don't have this kind of stuff. Even if you only have 5 students, it doesn't matter. You know, and a faculty like the philosophy is very sensitive to this kind of stuff. And we were kept alive because we had communication science, but communication science is gone now. So I'm not optimistic. I'm very sorry to say so.
Yes, I want to add to that you are very correct in that regard. But it is the case that the faculty has had structural deficits for a very long time now. And the last year's plans have been made to increase the funding, but the plans are not working. So now the only thing that is left to do is cut costs. And that is, as we said, not renew certain positions, but it is we are on the verge of the government. How do you say it? Dat de overheid zal ingrijpen, dat de overheid
intervene.
It will intervene exactly because the situation that they will directly, make decisions to. They will say, okay, that person has to go, that person can stay.
They cannot do that, right?
I'm not sure about that because
they cannot do that.
Yeah, it's what I have been told, but I'm not sure.
Can I ask
like
a different question?
Yes.
Go ahead, Dirk.
Yeah. So if you were the chef of the CLEA, then what should we aim for? So what is a wise way to establish a stable CLEA in the long run?
Leave Flanders.
So yes, funding from research is mainly based on these 2 things. So publications, PhDs, and the external research. So focus on these 3 things. As you can see, PhDs and publications still, they actually have all 3 kind of similar weights. So these are the things that directly influence the government grant that the faculty receives.
PhD and publications. So
what was the third?
An external. What was the third one? External
research. Yes, external
so
research.
Cooperation in research with some funding, right?
That's like just funded. I think funds. Right?
Yes, but there is also one thing. Maybe I must nuance. CLEA is not funded through this system. It is the departments are funded through this. So CLEA is not measured in this model.
No, this is for the faculty.
How do we get...
Now we go to the funding model B, no? Which is for the large research groups.
No, that is only for the BAS funding. So the BAS funding is 85% model B, for the research groups, but it is only for funding stream 2 or related to funding stream 2, which is a much smaller budget compared to this one.
Mhm.
Yeah, because this budget is for faculty, the whole faculty.
But the bus funding is for faculties as well, not for CLEA, or is it?
Yeah. And then how the faculty spreads the money through the departments. That's internal decision?
Or how, I think, it goes to department.
I'm not sure how exactly the spreading works, but every year I do calculate the deficits on basis of the departments and the education programs. So what I do see is, okay, for example, philosophy has earned this much in the allocation model this year. Philosophy has this much personnel costs. So this is the deficit on these philosophy, but it is not the way that how do you say it? If there's a surplus of 100K, that 100K does not go to the philosophy education or the HARP department.
There is no how do I say, no social redistribution within the faculty.
I think not.
It used to be different, eh? But it's not anymore, apparently. And CLEA is funded by what?
So the sub or professors of CLEA are funded in this allocation model. So and maybe other appointments you do that are probably on other funding streams. For example,
I mean, if we have a PhD, where does the money go to? The bus money or the other money?
The money through the bus, it goes 85% goes to CLEA and 15% goes to HARP.
And is there other money for a PhD than the bus money? Yes. In this allocation model, there is also money. And where does that money go to?
I'm not, the money from the allocation model, or
the money from the allocation model that you get when you have a PhD student
goes to the faculty.
Yeah, okay.
And then the faculty has a policy to give a given amount to the center. Is that the bus funding? How much money gives the faculty to the center or to the department?
No,
I'm not clear now if the bus funding is an allocation model that is taken from the money in the faculty, or it is apart?
It is separate.
And where does that money come from? Just as a question.
It's from R&D, but I am not sure
so
what
it comes from their share. It comes from the
38%, I guess, yes.
Okay, so the 38%
sure
goes to, part of it flows to R&D, and R&D has a model to flow.
That's what we suppose.
That's what we would, because zero sum, money is not created.
Yeah, but maybe there is a separate government funding stream.
It could be. It could be the Ministry of Science instead of Education or something like that.
I think the money from the bus is mainly, I could be wrong,
I will go a little bit into history first, because before we are going to talk about how to organize finance, etc., universities, we have to know what the fuck a university is. It is not just any kind of organization. Pardon? Okay. Yeah, it was Papa. Nice. So I think about this very nice quote from Rector de Jager in the beginning of academic year 1902, where he says, the way in which we talk about university gives her meaning, that meaning again informs people's action, thinking, judging about her. So there is a circular feedback loop. If we have an idea about what a university should be, our actions with respect, how are we going to organize this, what is the legal framework that we create, and how are we going to finance this, will be informed by these ideas, and vice versa. If you set such a framework in place, consciously or not, it will inform our ideas about what a university is. So it's really important to understand that it's not, like they say in French, n'importe quoi. So let's first look at where the university comes from. very interesting. And De Jager also mentioned this in this. This is really a great academic openings speech. He mentions this. The university is, as a structure, one of the very few surviving pre-modern social and professional organizations in Europe, and political as well, actually. One of the few, together with the Parliament of Lyon and some structure of governance in London, you have a few of those things that more or less in a recognizable form still functions like they were 500 to 1,000 years ago. That, and then the university. Mm-hmm. And that does not just mean the old universities that are still existing, like, say, Oxford or Bologna or something like that. Of course, they can trace their history back literally to that moment, but something is shared by all institutions that call themselves validly a university, even in the present day where the national legislations organizing these institutions in different countries can be very different. Also after the Bologna time, we will come to that, and especially also in other countries. To that extent that if I have a doctorate from the VUB and I go to England or to China or to some other place, normally I don't have, except to show a valid paper that can be traced to where it has been issued so that you can see that it's not a forging, but I, in principle, do not have to prove that I am what I am, namely a PhD in philosophy and a master in biology. This will be accepted, even if there are considered like prestige or hierarchy or quality differences between institutions. From the moment that you are considered a university, you are actually immediately accepted as such by your peers everywhere in the world. This is very unique. The only other system in Europe that more or less functions in the same way is classical music. There is no centralized authority that checks or that gives you a validation. Yes, you are a real director of a classical orchestra because we did you make some test and here is your paper. No, you studied in an academy or in a conservatoire. You did there the tests that were there required, and you have done your public events, performances, etc., etc., etc. You build a name for yourself. Voila. So you have some basic recognized, how would I say, credentials, but from there on, you can go wherever you want. And people will accept you. Okay, somebody who is very famous will be more easily accepted than somebody else, but nobody will say, you have a diploma in cello from the Royal Conservatoire in Brussels. Oh, no, you cannot play here. You first have to make a new exam in our conservatoire. They would say you're crazy. For universities, that's the same. So this is completely different from the present day, the modern day idea that everything should be certified, measured, qualified, proven, dataized, etc., etc., etc. There are traceable points of reference, but there is also a framework that is shared in the practice by everyone. If you go from one university to another, you will recognize this, even if the language is Spanish and the courses that they teach have a different idea about what philosophy is. You will still recognize this. This is very important, and this is very old. The name universitas, from which this word university comes, encapsulates this. It does not only refer, but universum, it actually means turning to the one, turning to the whole. But so it always implies this idea of a whole. But the point is, the term was used to indicate a corpus of people sharing a same practice or idea, like a guild. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it could.
That's another institution that is sold.
Yes. So stonemasons or the painters of wool, or they basically have the same organization. You enter that structure, you pass in a learning process that knows these steps, like bachelor and master. In the medieval guilds, it were exactly those names. And the mastership gives you the right to teach, not only to practice the profession, but to teach. Voila. And the term, so you have an universitas, it can be a guild of stonemasons, a guild of magistrorum et scholarium, students and masters. And that's a university, indicating that this is based on the idea of working around knowledge somehow. So it's a corporation. Another term that was used very generally and is even older than the term universitas is the term studium generale. Again, you have this nice ambiguity. It refers in the same time to all fields of knowledge, but also everybody. You can come from wherever you want if you have a university background or if you are allowed to study for the baccalaureate in this university, you can come to us and you can study with us as well. Sometimes maybe in the present day, it will not be possible because you need a lot of money. In that time, it was different because there were other kinds of support and you were supposed, this is of course the itch. Many people that went to university either were supported by a mecenas or the church, or they would come from a family with money.
Yeah.
And that is, of course, that's why, and we will see this later, we speak about artes liberales. The working language was Latin, which was very practical because everybody speaks, well, let's say the Spanish version of Latin, the English version of Latin, the French version of Latin, the Russian version of Latin. Not always easy to understand, but basically the same language. Not really a problem, not like what English thinks they are today. They are absolutely not. Because Latin was already for millennia not associated to a specific empire or country anymore. It was still universally used, however, in the church. You can say that the church is an empire, but then in a very different way. So there was not a competition between countries with respect to that. I mean, it was not like, yeah, I'm from an English university. I mean, not basically, right? Voilà. So Latin was universal and at the same time, to some extent, neutral, if you want. Now, what was the status of these universities? So they are groups of people and they were located most of the time in beautiful buildings that grow through time. They started relatively small, but then they would grow and grow and grow and become big and important. So at some point, the king or the Pope, at some point, the Pope would recognize it also if the king did, would issue a kind of statement, a papal bull, they call it, or a royal decree, saying, okay, you are now a university, and it's like actually recognizing you as a city, which comes with a whole lot of privileges and rights. Privilege does not mean like money privilege. Privilege means like freedoms, things you are allotted to do. If you are a city, for instance, you can organize a university if you get that in your bull. Or you can hold an annual market, or this kind of stuff, blah, blah, blah. But also juridical independence of local authorities, and also juridical independence of the church directly. So there was a juridical system in the university that treated with people who would do misdemeanor or crimes, etc., etc. It was not like the worldly police, or even, except in very extreme cases, the Inquisition, that would mingle with this. There was a high, I mean, independence was really for real there. Another high their activity or their profession. This was called the jus ubique docendi. If you were a magister, a master, you could go everywhere to other universities, that is, where you could teach. If you came from the university in Paris, in principle, you could go to London and teach there without problems. That doesn't mean that there sometimes were not like, how would you say, ego and jealousies and nya. Of course, human beings, right? But in principle, it was not. It is also called licentia docendi, the right to teach, the permission to teach, or the licentia is actually like a permission, like a driver's license or something like that. Jus ubique is a right that is valid everywhere. These two terms were used. Our old name of licence, licentie, for what we now call master, was actually coming from that. In Spain, I think they use it too, licenciado.
Bachelor.
Hmm?
It's the equivalent of bachelor.
No, it's the equivalent of a master.
No, licenciado in
Then it's different. Then it's different. Then it's different. The licenciate with us, what is the equivalent of the master, also recognized like that. The equivalent of the bachelor is the candidaat. And this is the rocket in 3 steps. You first enter and you get the candidate or the bachelor, which allows you to go for the study of magister or to get your license. And then when you have that degree, you are a master, you are entitled to go to like a specialization, the doctorate. Yeah. Or you could go to one of the 4 faculties, the higher faculties, law, medicine, or theology. That were the faculties that always existed in complete universities. That's something else. We will come to that. Law existed of 2 things: canonical law, which is church law, or civil law, the regular law in normal society. So these were that were the professions that you could study, and you could also obtain a doctorate in them, right? Law, medicine, and theology. Yes, and law consists of 2 parts. Voilà. We have done this already. Voilà. How do we imagine us? You're sitting in a classroom there. What is going on? Well, you're sitting in 2 rows. I will show you the picture. What does this picture remind you of? A modern institution that still meets more or less like this, literally.
Parliament.
See it again?
Parliament.
Yes, which one?
UK.
Yes, exactly, the British Parliament. Thank you. They still keep this. What you see in the British Parliament is largely equal to what would happen there, except that they would take a little bit more time to properly read their texts, and they would be probably a little bit more polite in their discussions. Also because there are 2 pedals walking with sticks that keep the order in the house, right? So they sit towards each other. The magister that leads the discussion of the students is over there. It could also be that there is an exam, a public exam taking place. Then one person would be confronted with a team of people. I will explain afterwards how this would go on. So, let me go further. There is something going on here. Voilà. Yeah, let's first go to what you said, the trivium and the quadrivium. So that is, of course, the 4th faculty. We have had the higher faculties of law, medicine, and theology, but the basic faculty was arts. And arts is what we now today call letteren en wijsbegeerte, right? That's basically the arts. That was the program that everybody had to go through before they could go to any of the other professions. Or they could simply be happy with being a magister or becoming a doctor in philosophy and stay there. That was also possible. Now, what did you learn in the Faculty of Arts? You had a 2-stage program. First, you have the trivium. That's a language-based course. It is about texts and about words. Grammatica, rhetorica, and dialectica. Dialectica is the art of debating opposite points of view, opposite positions on a hypothesis that is given. Using classical logic in the sense of Aristotle. And they were very skilled in this. The medieval period did a lot of important discoveries in the field of what we now call formal logic, which are still in use, which are still important, but which we often don't recognize as being originating there. With respect to crediting who did a real work, there is still a lot of things to do. Then after that, you would have quadrivium, which is more like mathematics and science, arithmetica, number theory, geometria, yeah, that's clear, musica, also clear, and astronomia. So these were the fields in the second part of the curriculum. This would take more or less 6 years. And then you were a magister. And then you could specialize. The artes liberales, nothing to do with a kind of political preoccupation or something like that, are like not in opposition, but are different from the artes mechanicae. They were all guilds. They had the same organizational structure. They would recognize each other immediately as such. But the artes liberales were those who people committed to, who were free to do so. The artes mechanica are arts that are absolutely a lot respected, but which serve to serve for your subsistence as well. You make your money with that. You live from that. While artes liberales in general, you would have some way of support to allow you to make that study. That's where this difference comes from, basically. And of course, there is also this idea of freedom, because you have these free debates, etc., etc. But nevertheless, the guild structures the whole program, like I say there. So it's not so much about freedom as such, although the idea of freedom and independence is deeply ingrained in the whole structure of the university. But artes liberales refers in the first place to you are free to spend your time with that. How does the class go? Well, today we read, I do not know, the categories of Aristotle, or we read some part of Thomas of Aquinas, or we read Ptolemaios on the heavenly system, and we start reading the text aloud. And then we stop at certain passages, and then there is a whole structure to this. It's called the disputatio. Certain sentences will be taken out and people will start to debate on them. Positions, hypotheses. Like the earth is round. That could perfectly be a position. And these kind of things were discussed, by the way. A lot of things that were officially not the church doctrine were discussed there. Normally, it would not lead to problems, but from time to time it did. And then, yeah. The University of Paris, for instance, after, say, 60 or 70 years of existence, run into, a little bit more even, run into trouble with the Bishop of Paris, because he found that there were too much heretical statements that were debated in the class. Even if they were in the books, yeah, then you should not read these books. So there was a temporary interdiction in this university to read certain books of Aristotle, of the classics, and of other texts that were considered heretic, like Veloz, an Arab philosopher, very interesting Arab philosopher, and things like that. They read internationally, yeah? It's not that they only read the Bible, forget it, or church texts. They did not have access to all the texts, but they read internationally. So students from Paris...
Outside of Europe, or?
Veloz is the Arabic world. And especially in medicine, there was already from the 9th century in Salerno, which is really the oldest university we have, there was already an influx of Arab influences as well. Only later, things like China will come, but at that moment it was, yeah, I mean, that was already big enough, right? So people from Paris fled to Oxford, and they were really, teasing the authorities in Paris, like saying, yeah, here you can read all the books still. We don't mind, you know. Huh? So that was really counterproductive for the University of Paris. But it happened. Sometimes there was a clash, but it was exceptional. It would not be like ICE invading the rooms of the university and picking out anybody because they said something. Not imaginable. Voila, we are almost at the end of this. A nice example, a famous text of Peter Abelard, who was, and this is also typical, the interdisciplinary nature of this work. They were specialized, but at the same time, because they all had this artes liberalis formation, he was a philosopher, a logician, and he made discoveries in this field. This is not just a name he claims, that is what we give him. A theologian, a musician, a composer, and a poet. He has made a very nice love poet to his friend, to his maîtresse Eloise, which is still a part of world literature. So he makes a collection of sententiae, statements, which is called sic et non, yes and no. Voila. From different sources, also ecclesiastical sources. Here, start to study. Start to take all possible positions with respect to this hypothesis. Take a position in favor, now take a position against, and argue everything you can for both positions. This was the way they trained themselves to be able to think through a problem to its deepest roots. So they were very well formed, and in many respects better formed than we with respect to this. What they did not do was experimental science. They had some observations of the skies, of course, but they would not do what like doing measurements to discover electricity or something like that. But they would be interested in phenomena regarding the status of the Earth, nevertheless. Huh?
It's this framework was for all clauses, like not only the Rhetorica clause, but also.
Rhetorica is a method of invention for them. Rhetorica is like experimental science. It's a way of discovery. So yes.
Like if they were teaching arithmetics, for example.
Yes, of course. And you can perfectly do that. Newton studied that way. And in the private notes that you find from Newton in the library in Cambridge, you see that a lot of his drafts are still structured that way. A position, a counter-argument, and a refutation of the counter-argument. Yes, we are not used to do that, but it's still possible. Of course, this way of working is more feasible for certain things than others, but logic and specific kinds of mathematics are quite apt for this. Of course, it is not experimental science. So at some point, where do you get your basic hypothesis from? In general, not always, but in general, it will be another text. So that's one of the weak points of this. Voilà. Reconciling contradictions is also something they try to do, blah, blah, blah. It's not about this. Okay. That was the historical part, so that you have an idea. That is basically what the university was, and to some extent is. Not in the extent that we still study only from texts, but writing articles is important and citing articles is important. That's a direct remnant of this, right? That's a direct remnant of this. A debate, a scientific debate, we use these terms. It can be written, it can be live in a conference like we had one before. That comes directly from this. The fact that you can choose, in principle, what you research and how you research it, as long as your methodology is sound. That's something that comes directly from this. The fact that you come from Chile and are here in Brussels and nobody says, hey, shouldn't you do an exam to show that you're really a whatever doctor or physicist or whatever it was. Or when I go to whatever, I was in Russia once in the 90s to speak at the conference. Nobody asked me anything. You know, that's also direct. That's the use docent, the use ubique docendi. Voilà, that's still valid. These things are still valid, should be valid, because at some point, accreditation and confirmation of diplomas, etc., become so overburdening that in fact, this right is completely hollow. Unless you belong to the select group that is recognized by some higher authority that says, and very often there is also this kind of underlying, sorry that I say it, but racism. If you're from Africa, you have really to prove, right? Even if everybody knows that a certain university can be a perfectly well good university in some countries. Voilà. So, well, there we go. But now, until the French Revolution, the system that I described, the Latin language, the structure of the education, what changed after the Renaissance was that from the higher faculties, theology dropped often out and was replaced by sciences. This is really funny. You still had artes, you had law, you had medicine, and then instead of theology, you had science. Sometimes you could also still have theology, yeah, if it was a Christian university. But so I like this. It somehow fits. The thing that we used to construct our worldview simply was replaced, and for the rest, the structure simply continued. In Belgium, in the present state, Belgium starts in 1830. Of course, Belgica is much older. Belgica was the ancient name for the 17 unified provinces in the 16th and early 17th century. Sadly enough, through the religious wars, the Spanish occupation, etc., this broke. So the northern part became, we call it Holland, but it's the Netherlands. Actually wrong, because that plural refers to the 17 provinces. But okay, Nederland, what we call Nederland. And then you have what later becomes Belgium, but what for a long time is called the Southern Low Countries. The Northern Low Countries, the Southern Low Countries. In the 19th century, they get unified again, but then there is 300 years past and the whole religious indoctrination on both sides had taken place. So the King Willem III, who was not a bad king as such, but his ideological outlook, etc., did not fit with many people in the south. And there became a rebellion, and okay, they throw him out. But he started, because the only university in the Low Countries, no, not the only one, there were two. There was Leiden, which is a 16th century university, and there was Leuven, which is a 15th century university. Both relatively late. I mean, Salerno is the 10th century, Bologna is the 11th century, Oxford is the 12th century. But still, late medieval universities. But the old University of Leuven, not Catholic University of Leuven, in the name Catholic University of Leuven, you can see that is an eminently modern institution, right? No ancient university would say, I'm Catholic or I'm Protestant or I'm whatever. Even if in practice, for many reasons, they would be. But they would never make such an ideological allegiance. Their independence was way too important for that. So the old University of Leuven was closed down by the French occupation in Belgium, in what we now call Belgium, in 1797. And then it finished. It never came back. What we have now in Leuven is a modern university that was founded in 1834. What happened? The King William started 3, because there was no functioning university in Belgium anymore, in what is now Belgium. In Holland there was, but not Verelst. He started 3 state universities in Ghent, Leuven, and Liège. Liège is in the Walloon country in 1817. Working language, Latin. They were still to a large extent like the old universities, but with a bit more modern bureaucracy, some state subvention, some state support. Because you see, this is the preliminary to the industrialization. It's not yet there, but it's coming up. There is a little bit more applied science activity, especially in France. France is way ahead with this, with respect to this. You see, Napoleon already starts schools for engineers and things like that. But then Belgium comes to be, and the people that founded the modern state of Belgium, we call it the Monsterverbond, the alliance of monsters, the Catholics on one hand and the free thinkers on the other. They came together to throw the Dutch out. And then, what now? So, one very bad thing for the Dutch-speaking people in the country was that there was unified language imposed, which was French. And they make a kind of compromise. The constitution is very liberal in the modern sense, very progressive, but Catholic Church will be allowed a lot of space to establish its own educational system, parallel with the educational system of the state. So the Belgian constitution, under the Title II, where you have the Belgians and their rights, you have this article in the present day numbering 24, I think before it was 12, but 24, which establishes the freedom of education. Education in Belgium is free. And that means that 2 things. You can start schools and universities. The state cannot forbid that. And you can choose where you study, always. This is really radical. And there are a lot of High Court and Council of State opinions and statements confirming this in its different kind of instances, manifestations. Voilà. So the Catholic Church started because you still had in Ghent the state university was closed down. The Catholic Church started a university in Malines, Mechelen, in somewhere before 1834, in the city where the archbishopry was, and the freethinkers started the university in Brussels, which became the Free University of Brussels, the French-speaking version of it, Université Libre de Bruxelles. Then somebody in the episcopary in Malines said, in Mechelen said, but there is an empty university in Leuven. Why should in Leuven it was closed down, not in Ghent. What did I say? The State University in Leuven stopped. There is an empty building there. Can we not go there? Everything is there. So they went there. The only thing that the present day Leuven University shares with the old one is the buildings, the site. All the rest is new.
Toilets. That's all.
I did not go to. Well, I hope not. Okay, voilà. And Theodor Verhagen was the first rector of the Brussels Free University, and that's why we have this Dies Natalis every year and the big cortege, etc., etc., etc. So these institutions, both the Catholic one and the free one, we call free education or liberal education in Belgium. What does this mean? It does not mean that you don't need money to study. That's another. It does also not necessarily mean that you have some ideology relating to freedom. In the case of the free universities, this is the case. But it simply means that you are not organized by the state. You are the result. Your constitution is the result of an initiative of somebody or something which is not the state. In the case of the Catholic University, it is the Catholic Church. In the case of the Free University, it was a group of prominent, rich, also progressive people in the non-Catholic or the moderate Catholic sector that wanted that there was not a monopoly of the church on education. It is said that Freemasonry played a role in this as well. But of course, we do not know this for officially, but there are some indications that you can see that they definitely have played a role. Like Freemasonry clearly had also an influence on the writing of the Belgian Constitution. But it was a compromise, as you can see, because the church could find their place and we could find our place. Voilà. Okay, let's go further. Yeah. So after the French Revolution in general, universities become much more embedded into the fabric of their national state. A German university, while it still remains a university in many respects, recognizable traits of this guild structure are there in the status of the professors, the how would I say, the autonomy of the relationship between professors and students, the way the boards are the elected, etc., etc., etc. So there was still, but they become much more part of the national ethos of the state. In France as well, even in Belgium to a lesser degree because the country is much less unified. But okay, but still, of course. So this cultural identity reflects itself in the outlook of the universities, but they still remain close in many respects to these medieval institutions in the way they conduct teaching, in the way they conduct research, etc., etc. In a certain sense, they are conservative, but because they are conservative, they can keep a lot of their freedoms safe. And it is even the Nazis tried to get power in the universities. How did they do it? By enthusiasming the youth for the Nazi movement. So by indoctrinating the students. But they did not, even the Nazis did not dare to simply take over a university, put out all the professors and put completely new ones instead. Even what they did do was pushing out all the Jewish ones. That they did do. So of course there was a lot of influence. But still the Nazis did not just dare an open attack to the institution as such. Yeah, to the institution as such. Because they needed it. It is the cradle of a lot of research and work that was going on.
In Chile, when Pinochet, the dictator, took the power, what he did was to decentralize the powerful university that was mostly like Freemason, and turn it into different things and put generals on top as rectors. But he also didn't, but they all remain with the same university structure. So what you say is very powerful.
Yeah.
Because nobody has dared to shift like the paradigm of what the university.
Yeah, but means. This is now happening.
Yes.
That's the point where I'm going to. Yeah. Okay. So I'm walking behind here. 1 second.
Mouse.
Yeah, but I'm just.
Okay. You're keeping.
Yeah. With this mouse, I changed that. Voilà. So even these more national identities, which make that the fabric of university life is very interesting. It was in the medieval time already a little bit like that. Salerno would not be the same as Oxford, evidently not. Although it would be universities, prestigious ones. So the Latin language was after the French Revolution slowly receding. In the German world, it stayed longer than in the French or in the Italian-speaking world or in the English-speaking world. But still, there was a lot of exchange going on, and the universities survived in a recognizable way, although they contributed much more to the local fabric of the state as well. Even there, it survived. So very different ways in different countries to implement legal, financial, structural, and cultural aspect of the relation between the state and its pre-national institutions. And like education in general has a very different outlook in different countries as well. I suppose in Latin America, that's even the same, no? Or is it like Mexico has the same system as Chile?
No.
No, voilà. And there they have the same language even. Okay.
Yeah, language, yes. For a university, and the slang is different on the streets, but the lecture room is...
Yeah, you can more or less understand each other.
Yeah. Castellano.
More or less.
But I think...
Accent.
Yeah, okay, but that's the same here. If you go to Holland, it's the same. Yeah, of course. Okay, Belgium was a highly industrialized, something happened there, state, or becoming a highly industrialized state. By 1850, 1860, it was fully in the... At the end of the 19th century, you have to realize this, Belgium was the 5th economical power in the world. Can you imagine that? For 3 reasons. One, they had the strong coal and steel industry in the south, where the poor people from the north, where there was most of the time farmland and textile, they went there. And also, of course, because of the colonialization of Congo.
I think first and foremost.
No. It's not first and foremost. Because the industrialization was already, we only started the colonization of Congo in 1860. That's late, right? That's, but of course, it added a lot to the financial means of the country. The Société Générale, for instance, got its wealth from there. The Union Minière also, that's for sure. But there was something already happening before. It's not just the colonialization. Okay, in Ghent, I take this as an example. 1817, this continues to exist for faculties, humanities, letteren en wijsbegeerte, the successor of the arts. Imagine what it implies for a university if you don't have an artist faculty anymore. You are not a university. The basic pillar, even if not everybody now studies letteren en wijsbegeerte before they go to the other fields, if you don't have that, you are simply not a university. Something fundamental is lacking. When I studied science, by the way, it was still normal that we got courses in philosophy, courses in psychology, and courses in history of our discipline. I am afraid that this now does not exist anymore, but okay. Voilà. Dus the arts, law, science, and medicine. Then quickly, and this is interesting because, as I said, the fabric of the national country, the early industrialization, we had our first railroad system in 1835, the first country on the continent, except from England. Technical schools in the form of the engineering schools of the French, which you also find in Switzerland, where Einstein studied, by the way, top-level scientific institutions. They already become there, what later becomes École Polytechnique. Until 10 years ago, engineering science at VUB was toegepaste wetenschappen, Polytechnique in French. So this was still there. They remain highly independent institutions after an intermediate phase where the state determined the number of faculties that they could have. In 1876, they get the freedom again to organize the study domains that they want, right?
Yeah.
The state funds ad hoc. So there is an annual budget and there is a certain amount of money that is set aside on the basis of negotiations and discussions where representatives of the local community and the university negotiate with their parliamentary representative that make sure that in the budget is enough money foreseen. And there was a certain tradition in that, right? When there is a financial crisis, then this is always called into question, of course. Students, it was artes liberales in that sense too. Students had to pay a tuition fee, which was relatively high. Until the 60s of the 20th century, having a diploma which included knowledge of Latin or provable knowledge of Latin in an entry exam was a prerequisite to go to university. Until just after the Second World War, this stays more or less the situation. This I said, the Constitution, Article 24, I don't have to go back to that. It's very different from France. In France, you have only education by the state, which is funded by the state. The church has schools, but you have to pay an enormous lot of money to go there because they have no public funding whatsoever. In Belgium, even a bit too much, they equalize the funding of the free institutions with the state institutions. The result of that is that higher education was relatively quickly what we call democratized in a very large degree, meaning that in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, people from lower social backgrounds in the financial sense could enter university. Tuition fees got very low. Social sectors were funded in the 50s already. So money, scholarships given to people to be able to enter university was starting back then. Ja, daar het onderwijs vrij. Elke preventieve maatregel is verboden. That's an important one. A general preventive measure like saying no university can, and then something relating to the competence of universities, strictly forbidden in the Constitution. So many of the things that happen now could be liable before Constitutional Court or the Raad van State, the Council of State. The community, that is the constituting power, the instance or the persons or the organization that is responsible for the organization of this type of education, has to make sure that in the case of secondary schools, the parents, and in the case of universities, the person himself can choose freely where to go to study. So you cannot just say you cannot come here because your skin is too brown, something like that. It's completely out of the question. The Belgian Constitution is very strong in this. The community is neutral in the sense of plural education. All different big ideological strands should be. You can find Catholic education in religious or levensbeschouwelijk. How do you say this? So every school, if it's a Catholic school, they will have some hours of Catholic religion. If it's a state school, they will offer either Muslim, either Catholic, either free thinking. There are several of those which are recognized by the state, and they must be present there. So that
we were talking about that yesterday. They even have funding.
Yes.
Funding for specific non-secular and like.
Yes. But they have to pass through a recognition for the state, not as a religion, in the sense of the content of the religion, but like Buddhism is also recognized, but they don't have a school system. Why? I don't know. Voilà. Neutraliteit, respect for the philosophical, ideological, or religious ideas of the parents and the students. This has major consequences, which were time and time again by the Council of State and Constitutional Court. Sorry. I was thinking in two languages at the same time, and I didn't even notice that I wrote it in Dutch at some point. Okay, let's go now. Yeah, this is just a quick, because where do you see that university slowly gets more and more in the slipstream of modern capitalist society? You can see that in the fact that the legal framework that is established to organize the financial support and certain structural requirements to get financial support, the only way the Belgian authorities can influence the university is through the financial support. So they have to create a framework that is valid in the same way for everybody because of the Constitution. And that's why they have all these allocation models and blah, 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 blah. They had other different kinds of models before. I will show you that. But voila. So, and even if the authorities push this too far, then they bounce on a niet from Constitutional Court or the Raad van State. For instance, recently, the Flemish government, which has really, they are quite right-wing in the sense that they're always about freedom and but they are very control-like. They want to control everything. very much. It's a very no. So they wanted to renew the educational goals of secondary education, and they wanted to do it in such a way that they want to force the Catholic schools more in the direction that they want. I don't even know the details, but they simply said, sorry, we fulfill all the criteria that are needed for proving that we give valid education and that there is enough quality, etc. So we are entitled to the financing. What you demand here infringes on our integrity. They went to constitutional court. They got.
But the end term was still decided by the government. No.
This end term can be designed by the government, but they cannot infringe. They cannot be so penetrating. They cannot be so detailed. The ways that this is controlled cannot be so imposing that you lose the autonomy over your educational project. So we always forget that, but the legal framework in Belgium is quite strong. It makes sense to use it, of course, not just like that. A procedure before constitutional court is not like going to the shop and buying an apple, but it is possible. So in 1949, the coordinated laws on academic degrees, that was a modernization of a whole lot of old systems, whereby they say, okay, all the universities in Belgium organize, we recognize the degrees of all the universities in Belgium on these and these and these and these fields, there they can get funding. Still, the universities could organize other diplomas. So you would have what they call the legal and the factual degrees. A legal degree would, for instance, be law or medicine. The university would receive money for that. But theoretical physics would not be a recognized degree, or economics. It would not be economics became a recognized degree only in 1968. It would not be a recognized degree, but the university could perfectly well organize it and give you a valid diploma for it. Mm-hmm. So there you see that this freedom went far, and that the way of steering the policies of the universities passed always through the mechanism of financing. Then the National Study Fund Act, that's what I said. The state starts to invest money in opening possibilities for people to go to university if they have otherwise financial problems to do so. Mm. Then the law on university expansion, that's something very typically Belgium. In 1965, you had these big universities, the volledige universiteiten, which had this right of organizing courses that they wanted. But now the state was investing in partial university institutions with, for instance, only bachelor degrees in some fields in provinces of the country where no academic education was available otherwise. So there became, and the bigger universities were a bit angry because they felt like, you're stealing our students. But from a democratic point of view, it was not unlogical, of course. So that's how RUCA in Antwerp and the LUC in Hasselt started. Now they became merged with the local universities again through the associations, but for decades, these were independent institutions. Voilà, the difference between full and non-full, or complete and non-complete universities. That's and that gave an enormous boost in the participation in university education in Belgium. Then in 1971, very important, the Higher Education Financing Act, the Financieringswet op de Universiteiten. They started preparing this in 1965. They took really their time and they came up. It's like the mother of all allocation models, if you want. I think I made a separate slide. Yes, kijk. It linked the operating subsidies of Belgium University to the number of subsidized students and fields of study. The fact that engineers are paid 3 times more than philosophy stems from there. And in that time, it was, of course, much more, how would I say, understandable to some extent, because the material demands that you needed to set up whatever kind of physical experiments. I mean, now you have computers and everybody uses them. The difference becomes much smaller, and the big infrastructures are not at universities, they are at CERN or something like that. But then it made some sense still. So What did they do? They allocated money to every university per se. So you started with a certain amount. The idea being that whatever you're big or small, you need a basic number of professors, number of fields, materials, etc. to start. That was allocated to everybody, and then they worked in, I believe, if I remember correctly, in slices of 45 students. For every 45 students, you get a number of money more. You did not get money per student because they said ridiculous. If you have 1 or 2 students more, you do not need an extra professor. If you have 20 students more, you need an extra professor. So they did it. There was a system like that. And this also, to some extent, linked research, because professors were researchers and teachers at the same time, linked research intrinsically to how big the university was, but not big in the purely quantitative step. It went in steps. So it was not like, how would I say, it was not just a competition to be the biggest. You were warranted a survivable amount of money in any case. And this system worked because until the early 90s, whatever the student from which university in Belgium takes part in, for instance, the entrance exam to the medical profession in the United States, there was no significant difference between the universities, the result of that student from Leuven succeeds and that student from Ghent fails. No, you could say, okay, Belgian students have more than 90% chance to succeed these exams. So it was a democratic system. There was very low subscription fee. There were almost no entrance exams, except for engineering for historical reasons, not even for medicine at that time. And it was the way quality, what we now call quality assessment, did not exist in that way. You had a homologation commission that evaluated the diplomas on a regular basis at the end. And how did they do that? They simply make a kind of preliminary conditions. If you want to organize a study of biology, you need at least plantkunde, animal science, plant science, genetics. So there was for every discipline, there was a list of requirements. And on that basis, they homologated the diploma. It was the opposite from now, not end terms, but begin terms. Voilà. And that was until the beginning. I have lived in that system for a long time. Until the beginning of the 90s in Flanders, that still existed, and it was very successful. Even USO, the OECD, recognized this. But of course, it costs a lot of money, and it was started in the period of the 60s and 70s when there was expansion on economical level. But 2 or 3 years after this was implemented, we have the oil crisis and a financial crisis. And that causes immediately a lot of financial problems. And there is a lot of financial stress. The funding goes down. And in 1978, there is a substantial addition to the tuition fees, to 10,000 Belgische francs. And there was a legendary protest against that through the whole country. Yes, yes, yes.
Sorry, Karen, I have to go. So thank you for the expose, and see you soon.
Yes, see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Yeah, can you make it 15, the rest of the talk?
Well, yeah.
Because of time, yeah.
Yeah, it's too much.
Very interesting though, but yeah.
Yeah, I didn't really think about it. Yeah. Because there is so much relevant information there. I mean,
this is for a course. Well, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. Okay.
Continue, yes.
Regionalisering van het West. Education is separated for the Walloons and the Flemish. So it's not there is not a federal ministry of education anymore. The Flemish have their ministry and the French have their ministry. Catholic education in Flanders always was very powerful. They have a very strong structure and they take the ministry immediately. They start to make a reform of financing policy and structuring policy of higher education in Flanders. There was a background to this. We will see this immediately. But at that time, I was studying then. I have lived this. I remember this very well. Suddenly, Minister Koens is the name of the guy, came up with a full decree, which comes up with a completely different structure. for the universities. So you get this idea of budgetary autonomy. This is the precursor to what was called envelope financement. I think that Arne called it. That's the first step in that direction. So they say, we're not going to let you grow in shifts anymore. We say, this is what you get and you have to do it with that. It was not that radical, but it was for the time very radical. So not the number of students. There was a kind of historical budget. You had received that until now. This is your historical socle, and for the rest, we will see what you get, right? There's this idea not only of you have to solve the problems that you get yourself financially, but also competition for a budget starts there. The rationalization 40-20 rule, it was not completely implemented because there was a lot of protestations, even before Constitutional Court, but that was like, you can only be subsidized if you have 40 students or more. So it was not like you get a basic financing anyhow, up to the first 45 students. It was no, you get nothing unless you have 40 students. So smaller institutions were very disadvantaged by that. And then already also this idea of fusions, associations. This became after the Bologna thing. And now you have this with the technical schools, with the higher schools and the universities. Of course, many of these schools were Catholic. So the University of Leuven could spread its fingers everywhere in the country. The people that wrote this all came from the University of Leuven, and the Catholic University of Leuven, and we will see immediately why. I mean, the minister was of this ideology, but okay. And then visitaties, suddenly we have kwaliteitsbewaking, and we have to warrant quality. Yes, this suddenly came out of the blue. Actually, this idea of kwaliteitsbewaking stems from the Japanese car industry in the 80s. That's where this concept was developed. And you have, of course, the paradoxical situation that you have to quantify something which is intrinsically not quantifiable, namely quality. The qualis of something is what it is. The quantity of something is how many it is. That's not the same thing. I can have 20 people, and that's a number, but there are 20 different people there. I mean, voilà. So, but like you wanted to know what the KPI is for something, I was then asking always in writing and in talking and debating, what is quality? Define what you mean by quality. Never could give, it's always something quantitative.
Now the problem is that we don't even know what is the thing we quantify.
No.
So we lost that battle, and I think we have to go back.
Yeah. But so, that's why I say this.
Yeah.
We lost that battle, but it's like you would give a literary prize on the basis not of the quality of the book, how it is assessed by his the number of copies that have been printed, the number that is sold, the number of references in the newspaper, and the number of pages in the book. That would be more or less the equivalent of a Nobel Prize for literature based on how we now assess the quality of scientific education and research, which is completely crazy if you look at it like that, but we still do it, and it gets worse and worse, because what you say about the digitalization, I fear that you're right. Okay. Then the structure, okay. Where does this come from? Very shortly, because I don't have time to speak everything. In the 80s, on the European level, there was a lot of things happening. There was the European Roundtable of Industrialists. It still exists. It is the lobby group of the back then 45, now 60 biggest industries in Europe. And they wanted a kind of reform of education in the American style, a unified system everywhere, preferably all one language, one financing mechanism, and merging as much as possible with the interests of great industry on the level of research programs and things like that. It was a very brutal and radical report. I remember I have read it. Now you can find things on the internet. Back then that didn't exist. So you had to go to places to find things. And at the same time, there was this Coimbra group. Coimbra is also an old university. The old and prestigious, and often of Catholic or Christian origin, not necessarily still, universities had a network, and they supported actually a kind of pan-European ideology, cooperation on a pan-European scale. We found that there were a lot of connections going on between these two groups. So they wanted to create a network of centers of excellence. So a hierarchy between the universities, which was structurally valid. Yeah? So not to this text itself, but a text that quotes these, you find in the introduction to the Koensdecreet. That's where they got their inspiration from. And of course, in Belgium or in Flanders, Leuven should have been the top university. It's the oldest one, isn't it? And the most prestigious one, blah, blah, blah. Okay. This was only partially implemented because there was a lot of protest, even from students from Leuven. The VUB coordinated this for a long time. I know this because I was there. But nevertheless, parts of it were implemented, and this idea of visitatie and of budgetary autonomy was to a large extent in a moderated, slower way implemented, and we saw the consequences of that afterwards. Then, but yeah, I forgot to say this. This is important. Yeah. Yeah. These reports that I mentioned, the European Commission in 1991 made a white paper, Memorandum on Higher Education. They took these ideas and they made a kind of preliminary legal document that would become implemented in the whole of the European Union. It's the proto-Bologna, basically. But it was even worse than Bologna, and there was a lot of protests coordinated and organized. Belgium played a central role in this. The Koensdecreet was partially implemented. This thing was vetoed by our Minister of Education in 1992 at the Council of Ministers in December 1992. So some things were won, others were lost. The main reason why they couldn't is because the European Commission has no direct power on education. They have to go through the Council of Ministers. What happened, typical in the European Union, in 1991, 1999, they did it another time, and they did it right. They started with the Council of Ministers. The European Commission prepared it, of course. They came up with a new proposal to make a unified educational market. They had requirements on the level of the degrees, and that's what the Bologna process actually was. The way they wanted to implement it in Belgium would have even led to the fact that you could not do your master's anymore as a part of your basis education. You would have to pay like enormously high entrance and tuition fees. We went to Constitutional Court with that, and we won this one, but not completely, because the change of the degree system took place nevertheless. As you can see, we have now these bachelor and master degrees. Voila. So the Structuurdecreet from 2003 is the implementation of Bologna on the Flemish side. What do you see? The degrees that exist are abolished, and we get these bachelor masters thing. Technical schools and colleges are academized, so you have these associations. That's the power grip of Leuven. Yeah. And then the quality assessment and the accreditation are implemented.
So this was happening all over the world. I mean, this is something. But the lobby that it's going on here, it's interesting because
it is, but the lobby was working through the European
propagates, I don't know.
The European Commission pushed this out. I mean, it is directly in they see education as a weapon in the worldwide economical competition war with other powers. That's what they see. They don't see education as a free, independent institution where liberal debate and search for true knowledge can take place. Right?
But also this has been always in history. Education has served the purpose of sustaining the current hegemonic structure.
And at the same time not. Universities are interesting because they did and they did not. Always. Yeah. That's the interesting thing. The point is, this was pushed everywhere in Europe, but they completely failed in getting the same system everywhere. You go to France, you will have a magister and a bachelor there too, but they have a different meaning from here. In Germany, you still have institutions that use this system and that use the other system. So it's completely ridiculous in the end. And it's like, if there were not exchanges between universities and before that.
This was a big problem also for the postgraduate courses because they never managed to have a unified system for those. I know that there was an initiative around those years. They tried to make like, okay, secondary, like postgraduate education diplomas and all that, create an accreditation system, and it failed because they couldn't find right criteria.
Of course, and actually even on the normal level of degrees, it failed because what you see is an explosion of the bureaucracies that have to validate the diplomas. Before, it hardly existed.
Yeah.
I mean, I had much less problems to go with my licentiate diploma somewhere else than I would now have with my master's degree. So it's completely ridiculous. If you want to do stuff the same in different circumstances, you have to do something fucking different. If you put the same on different circumstances, that's what the Constitution says. In order to treat everybody equal, you have to adapt your system so that it fulfills the right needs.
Yeah. So
okay, so we are almost there. The last 2008. Arne, you're still there?
I'm still here, yes.
Okay, you survived. You're courageous. You're great. You see, we are in 2008. I have a few more slides, but I will not.
1,000 years lecture.
Oh, please don't do that to me. What time is it, by the way? Fucking hell. Yeah. Yeah, it's 6 o'clock. I have to go to my exam afterwards. But okay. So the difference. So this is a step further in this logic of controlling the processes of the university, measuring on a micromanagement level, not only what gets in, but also what gets out. So here, this idea of output financing, not input, but output. How many diplomas, how many articles, that starts here. So this is only possible because of the logic of the changes that took place before, right? You could not have started with that. No. And I'm afraid that they concoct even worse than this. Now they also think about the student efficiency. The students have to study so little time as possible, but then you cannot do any discovery or make a mistake, or the school becomes completely a kind of indoctrination place, actually, you know. So the means are divided on the basis of a formula of realized study points. That's what Arne explained before. It's literally that. This is the general concept of what we get a fantastic detailed explanation by Arne. So I don't have to go into this because all is there. Voilà, that's it. I'm going to